Hello everyone, welcome to Learning from Home channel. Now in this video we are going to talk about using auditing tools in Microsoft Excel. Now under using auditing tool, we talk about displaying dependent and precedent errors, removing dependent and precedent errors, and evaluate formula. Now in order to understand this, displaying dependent and precedent and removing dependent and precedent, let's use this table as an example to explain it for us. Now let's say this table, we have a product, we have quantity, price, total, and we have tax. Now the total, the product we have in the shop, there is a quantity that we have and the price for each. So in order to do that, we need to just calculate it, right, to get a total. So in order to total, let's multiply the quantity by the price. So equal to, that's the quantity times the price. Okay, now give us the total for this. So now we have, when you multiply this to this, you have the total. Now in order to just get the currency, you can just highlight them and go to format cell, format, and then go to currency and choose the currency that you want to, and click on OK. All right, so that's the currency. Now when you are done with the, you see, when you're done with the first one, you can just click on it. Now you move the cursor at the right bottom. Now when it turns to the deep additional symbol, just press and hold the left button, and now let's drag. That's a flash fill. So we have it over here. Now let's find the tax. Now the tax is 5% of the total amount here. So we're going to multiply this by the 5% to have the tax. So equal to now this total times, now this is the tax. Now since we wanted to keep this tax constant, we multiply by each, we must lock this. So just pressing F4 once, F4, and it is locked. Now press enter. Okay, now let's clear this off. I can still fill it over here. So let's fill it as a flash fill. Okay, so we filled it here. Now let's find the total for each. So in order to find the total, that is equal to sum, then bracket open here. So let's select the whole quantity here. Okay, then press on enter. We have the total. Then we can just move it, just hold it and move it to this side. That's a fill right. So it is there. And let's fill it again, and let's see. So we have this. Now that's the total. Okay, so from here up to this side, let's format it, the currency, because since it is cash, let's format the currency. Now, okay, so we have the currency here. So you see that now when you click on this, check the formula bar. You can see it has value 54. When you click on that, it has just value 54 and 43 here. But when you click on the total, you can see you are not having value. You have two cells being multiplied together. The same thing applies to the tax. Now the total, the same thing. Okay, there's a formula here. So this means that this is a dependent. It depends on these columns. Okay, so this, all the total here, they depend on these two columns in order to formulate this. The same thing applies to this. Now this also depends on this here to formulate the results here. So when you make changes here, it's going to affect thing over here. So example, when you decide to just delete this, you can see now here is 0, because this depends on these figures over here to formulate the score that you see. Okay, but and also when you delete this, it's going to affect this. When you delete this, see, it's going to affect the entire, or that's the total and the tax, because these two, they depend on this. So that's a dependent. So these columns depend on this column here to formulate the answer that they have, and that's a dependent. So in order for us to see the formula being used here, how can we do that? How can we do that? Go to Home tab, that's a Formula tab. Now click on Show Formulas. So when you click on Show Formulas, just go to, you can see that now we have the formulas over here. You can see now here has no formula. Here it doesn't depend on anyone. This doesn't depend on anyone. But this depends on this to get the answer. the same thing applies to this and that. Okay, now when you click on this, it depends on these two guys here. When you click on these two, it depends on what? This. So you can see that these are all dependent. Okay, these are all dependent. Now let's say if you want to point it with arrow, if you want to just show the exact cells being added or multiplied to get the answer there, how will you do it? So let's click on, let's deactivate the show formula. Now let's, at the same formula tab, click on trace precedent. Trace precedent, and let's see. Now when you trace precedent, now this is dependent, alright? So it depends on this and this. So the answer that you have here was this and this. Now when you click on these two and go to show precedent, it tells you the same amount here depends on this tax here times the total price here. Now when you click on the same thing here, show that's a trace precedent, you have the same thing, this and that. Now when you click on this total and click on trace precedent, now you see this depends on the figures over here. Okay, now the same amount here, when you just, let's remove the arrows by click on this remove arrow. Now let's this figure here, let's click trace precedent. You can see that now this all added got this. Now when you click on the same precedence again, it now moves further. So all this here was gotten by multiplying the tax here by the figures or the total here. Okay, now when you click on precedence again, it's going to tell you that now this total here was gotten from multiplication of this and that. So now let's click on the trace precedent again. Now we see that now this and this was multiplied together to get the total number or total amount here. So that is a precedent. So precedents are used for dependent. Now these figures depend, or these cells depend on these cells to get the answer here. Okay. Now let's go for, so now let's click on remove arrow. So remove arrows. Okay. So now you can see that now this doesn't depend on any. So when you click this and go to trace precedence, you can see it doesn't depend on any because it contains a value here. It doesn't contain formula. It contains a value. So if it is not precedent, then this is dependent. Okay. So that's a precedent over here. So click on the precedent and it tells you it is not used in any, or this value here wasn't formed from the addition or multiplication of any two cells. It depends on itself. So click on that and let's go to trace dependent and let's see. Now when you click on trace dependent, it tells you that this cell has been used in this, and it has also been used in this. And true, before we got this, we added the whole cells here, right? So it has been used here and use that. When you click on the same trace dependent again, it tells you after being used here, it was also used this and that. So click on it again, you can see that now it was also used this here to that. Okay, so the more you click on the dependent or the precedent, the further it explains, or the further it goes. So it tells you where and how that cell, particular cell, is being used across the table. So that is the precedent and the dependent. So it is used when you have the cell value and the cell wasn't formulated by addition of two or multiplication of two cells. You go for the dependent and know where that cell was particularly used. But if it is formula, then you go for the precedent and ask which cells was added, subtracted, or was multiplied to get that value. So the formula, it now shows the formula and explain the formula to you. So that is a way to display or use the precedence and the precedent. So when you have any table and you have any calculation in, and you want to check which cells was added or was multiplied to get the answer, you may use the dependent and the precedent to do that. Now, when done, you can just click on remove arrows and the whole thing is being removed. Now, when you click on the remove arrow drop down, you see remove precedent and remove dependent. So it depends on the tab that you want to remove. If you want to remove all, you click on remove arrows and all gone. Okay, so that is a way to use that. Alright, so I hope it's clear now. So now you've understood how to use the trace precedent and trace dependent to just show formulas and evaluate them. Okay, so that is it for today's video, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.